on Elgin Street in St. Thomas. We're about to meet Shawn Jackson, the funeral director of Shawn Jackson Funeral Home. We're going to go around side to their accessible doors and we're going to meet him. Shawn Jackson, how you doing?
Paul, I'm doing well. Nice
Awesome.
to see you.
Well, thanks so much for having us. This is one of our more unique segments on our show. We are here at Shawn Jackson Funeral Home. Shawn Jackson himself. He's going to tell us about his space, about some trends in what's happening in the funeral world, and show us some really incredible stuff here. So we're excited here. It's not a place that you would typically be excited about going to, but it's super interesting, and quite honestly, it's a fact of life.
It is. We do have a lot of people that try to avoid our place. They don't want to be here, but we do also have folks that have a lot of questions about what we do and what happens behind the scenes. So, yeah, if you're ready to take a little tour and see what we do, then
yeah, well,
I'll show you around.
100%. So I came in here, and obviously you think about folks, it's older age typically, and ideally, you've had a good, wholesome life. But even getting into the building, I think for some of maybe you're the people here.
Yeah, I noticed, yes, you did use our side entrance here, which is fully accessible from our parking lot. So it does help a lot of our families that are here. They're a little bit older clientele that are able to enter the building on their own, which is very helpful to them, and they appreciate that. So
great. And we're going to get down to the basement because there's a lot of cool things to see here. But let's take a little walk through here, and
sure.
As we're going, maybe you can explain some of the spaces. Let's take a look at this room, and I know, we're again. You think about, obviously, there's a lot of preconceptions about what, being in the funeral home and your bodies and life and death and everything like that. But you joked at the start, kind of, you're an event planner now.
Right. Yeah. When I first started, became licensed, funerals were very traditional. It was someone passed, you're going to have a funeral, a visitation if there was one, and or then the funeral the next day, interment in the cemetery, and that was it. Now things have changed where there's delays, whether it's a burial or cremation, if there's going to be different types of speakers, musicians, slideshows, all sorts of things that, in different venues too, where people want to have their services.
So tell me, so that's kind of changed, maybe that's more immediate, but what other sorts of things or things that you've seen? Because how long have you been doing this, I guess? Let's start there.
Well, I was licensed in 2000, so approximately 22 years. Yep. And then I was volunteering at a funeral home down in Windsor before that. So yeah, probably about 23 years or so total.
So in that, and I'm going to make you seem old, in that quarter century, Shawn, in that quarter century that you've been in this business, what changes have you seen?
One of the biggest is definitely the trend in cremation as opposed to a traditional burial.
Okay.
So when I first, I guess, became licensed quarter century almost ago, it was probably, it wasn't very often that we'd encounter cremation. It was maybe 10% of the families we served would choose cremation.
Okay.
I would guess, even if I was light on that, maybe 70 to 75% of the families are opting for cremation nowadays.
So it flipped that dramatically.
Yeah, and I think it's a trend that'll keep growing. Yeah.
And why?
I think there's a lot more flexibility to it. Like we touched a bit earlier, it's more of an event now. It's not just traditional, this is the way it used to be, this is the way we're going to keep doing things, funeral, burial, we're done. It gives people flexibility on time frames when they can have that service or ceremony. It gives them some flexibility on the venue that they choose to use. So we've had events all over the city, the Queso Station, Wildflowers, Masonic Hall, all over the place. People are sometimes tending to do it in their, a little bit smaller venues at their own homes, things like that. So
even the idea from that case, it really is a celebration of life, and again, whether as a funeral director or an event planner, whatever you want to call yourself, depending on what hat you're
still
wearing.
Still a funeral director or undertaker, yeah.
Yeah, but you're really trying to curate and create special opportunities to celebrate lives well lived.
That's right, yeah. It's one of the things we tell our guys to focus on when they're meeting with families is that be open-minded. You got to try and help them create an event that's unique, kind of more personal for them.
Yeah.
Whether it's the event itself to whether you're incorporating, like I say, different musicians, music, slideshows, even the stationery nowadays is personalized. So we've gone from a little card that people used to take to personalizing those to making trifold cards with like collages on them, all sorts of things. So.
And to our community's benefit as we grow in diversity and people from various different cultures, does that help you guys, like in terms of the flexible space, in terms of the flexible, really approachable approach? Are you able to accommodate,
Yeah, so with the space that we have, this room is pretty open. It's a good sized space. So we've had different religious backgrounds, faiths that have used this area just because it is large enough to use where they don't feel like they have to be at a church per se or like too much of a public space. They can come here and have their own unique religious types of services here, as opposed to, like I say, having to rent a hall or something like that. They can use this venue for that, and we're well equipped to accommodate those people.
That's awesome. Well, I'm really excited about that. This is, and I was informed, 1934, you said this was a purpose-built funeral home, 1932, 34?
Yeah, right around that time frame. It was state-of-the-art at the time, so.
I love it. We're just about to check out the state-of-the-art basement. We'll see you in a second. So we're in the basement here, and I know I want to ask you about the urns, I want to ask you about the caskets. Again, behind the scenes, something that most folks probably wouldn't see, or when they do, it's really tough moments. Where do you, I know it's obvious for the family, where do you find the strength to actually deal with that on a regular basis?
I think, not to sound too crass, but you're trying to do your job. Your job is to help out a family and to be there to give them proper guidance and to help them create that service that they want. So it's hard, there are times you can get more emotionally attached to things. Younger folks, babies, like I've had my own family members that we've had to create funerals for and perform the funeral for them. So those are some of the tougher times, but other than that, it is a job, and your job is to provide information and guidance for families that are going through a difficult time.
But I mean, such important stuff, and obviously, no doubt you find value in terms of creating that memorable, important experience for folks who have lost a loved one.
Right, yeah, we do.
So segueing into that, there's some practical options, right?
Right.
Like, again, not all death here, but we talked about cremation upstairs.
Yeah.
So typically what happens after that? Like, what are the options that a family would even have?
So if someone is choosing cremation as a final disposition, you can choose to have the cremated remains placed in an urn. So we have different styles of urns. So some are on display for the funeral itself, as opposed to a casket. So a lot of the
And would that be these ones? Because we don't see
Yeah.
behind, but there's some other options here, and we'll get to those in a second. But these would be, I'm going to be cremated, I would like to have this be incorporated as part of it, and this would be...
Exactly, like a memorial service or a memorial kind of a wake where they don't want the body or the casket present.
Yeah.
They would choose more of a decorative urn to have there in its place. Other options that we have are kind of on that display area behind you there, where it's a little bit more of a, I guess we use the term keepsake, or kind of a memorialization, that it's something after maybe the urn's interred in the ground or a niche, or the ashes are scattered, that people want to keep a small portion of that, which is an option.
So touch on that just a little bit more. So you could bury the urn with the ashes. You could scatter the ashes, and there's environmental ways to do that. We chatted about that a little bit earlier. Yeah. Do some people just simply keep them?
Some people do choose to keep them. Yeah. Some people, for multiple purposes, they want to keep them. Some just can't get to that stage where they want to have the burial take place. It's a finality they're not ready to deal with sometimes until later on down the road. Some just choose to have them at home. It just makes them feel better. But majority of folks, there's a finality that they either inter the urn in a cemetery or in a niche in a cemetery, so,
Okay.
which is above ground.
Okay,
So,
I was going to ask you about
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
I didn't know about the niche. Okay.
yeah. So there's above ground structures called columbariums,
Okay.
and each little space that's in the columbarium is a niche. So you can usually have 2 urns that go into a niche, which these are kind of niche urns here. They're small enough that 2 of them can fit in one space. So
And do you have people that actually bring their own urns? Is that
Yeah.
okay? Then
Oh, we do, yeah, yeah.
that's kosher and allowed and everything like
oh yeah,
that. Okay.
yeah. There's really no rule on you have to have an urn per se, or you have to have a certain type of urn. So, touching on the scattering part,
Yeah.
you don't need an urn for that. But we do have options.
Yeah,
if
this one
people-
caught my eye down here. Can I pick that
Yeah,
up?
yeah. Go ahead. Yep. So they're biodegradable. Okay, they have a little print on them, but people, and I always use the example of opening Bass, because I used to go there every year,
Okay.
down Long Point. So you'd always see once in a while a little mass floating around, and you're like, oh, someone's scattering their ashes today, or memorializing someone that wanted to be out on the water.
Yeah.
Something like that. If you just take that lid off and you just kind of puncture the top, the ashes are inside. You can just place the lid back on, and it kind of sinks and deteriorates at the bottom of the lake, which, as opposed to having it float around from boat to boat kind of thing.
Yeah,
then,
for sure.
Yeah, it's a little bit more
Dignity
contained.
even
Exactly.
within that, and getting it to the spot where you
Exactly.
want that to have. Now,
Yeah.
again, we're behind the scenes. We're talking candidly about death and being
Yeah.
at a funeral home. You mentioned something that I found super intriguing was
Yeah.
the ashes are really heavy.
They're a lot more dense. Everyone thinks campfire ash. That's what they equate it to.
Yeah,
'cause that's the only
that's what
ash
I would
we're really
imagine
used
when
to,
I rolled
right?
in here this morning. That's
Yeah.
what I would have thought.
Yeah, so they are a lot more dense. They're more almost like a powdery substance. I think we talked about like a talcum powder or something like that, just to kind of give you a visual or more of a context to it. So they're quite heavy. So if someone was in that biodegradable tube there, you're thinking probably 25 pounds, which...
Oh, this would be wow.
Yeah, so
We're
it's
getting a workout then.
Yeah, it gets a little bit heavier than most
Yeah.
people think. So yeah.
Great. So this is one option, but I mean,
Yeah.
tell us about some of these.
Well, so most caskets in here, they're your, like you say, traditional type casket where the person's in the casket and the casket's buried. We do have this one right here that we're standing beside is called a rental casket,
Okay.
which might sound like a bit of a weird term, but to rent a casket. But inside this, this is actually an empty shell. And then if you see these 2 little dowels here, once the service is over, this hinges down. There's an actual complete casket or cremation unit inside there. So all that interior that you see is buttoned in. It just comes out with the person, and there's a separate lid that's placed on. So it's just it's a more economical way for people
maybe
to have
environmentally
cremation.
more responsible as well too. You're reusing, reducing.
That's right, yeah.
As well.
Yeah,
So we're gonna, we're in the basement, this
In the
is
basement.
it is really cool, and it's lovely, and it's not there's zero
Thanks.
scare down
I've never
here.
had anyone say it's pretty cool in a funeral home.
I think it's tremendous, knowing again that it was purpose built as well. And you want what? As we close down this interview, I want to ask the old school idea again about a funeral home. The funeral director actually lives here. Is that still the case?
It is in my case, yeah.
Alrighty.
Yeah, we do. My family lives on site. There's an apartment upstairs. So the main level we started out on, the level above it's actually an apartment. So we have a living space up there.
There you go.
It's I don't think it happens too often, but we're, I guess, old school undertaker in me that
There.
you live where you work.
Well, lovely. Well, Shawn, thank you so much for inviting us in. Thank you so much for sharing what you do. The passion and your compassion is absolutely palpable. And where are you located so folks need to find you?
Well, we're on 31 Elgin Street, and thank you for taking your time out of your day to come in and ask questions, because a lot of people have questions, and for some reason they like to avoid me and asking questions. I don't know why, but no, it's good to have those types of questions answered, and just let people know if you want to know something, just call, drop in for a coffee. It's okay. We're gonna try and keep you here too long.
Yeah,
So.
fair enough. And I mean, my big takeaway is that, custom celebrations like this is a way to help any family that's grieving and in that process to celebrate the life of their loved ones on their own terms and in their own way. And you're meeting that. So congratulations.
Well, thanks. Appreciate that.